into greater detail on campus with you once this current situation passes. Before I introduce my colleague, I'd like to provide a bit of housekeeping. Live closed captioning of this presentation is available by clicking the CC button on the top right of the window. Should you need additional accommodations for future presentations, please don't hesitate to be in touch with the Office of Admission, and a member of our staff would be happy to explore options with you. Following the initial presentation, we are pleased to host a question and answer session. Please submit your questions at any point using the chat window available on screen. Now I'm pleased to introduce Peter Palumbo, Providence's Director of Academic Advising. Peter has been a member of the Providence College community since 2017 after previous experiences at UConn, Dean, and Suffolk University. In his role, he's responsible for coordinating our faculty-based advising program that serves students by helping them develop educational plans in accord with their interests and commensurate with their abilities. Through Peter's work and programs, undeclared students enjoy the opportunity to explore their interests, tap their talents, research options, evaluate alternatives, and make informed academic decisions before selecting a suitable academic major. I'm pleased to introduce to you Peter Palumbo.
Thank you very much, Owen. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. As Owen said, my name is Peter Palumbo. I'm the Director of Academic Advising, and I also oversee the Undeclared Advising Program. This evening, I'm going to talk to you about many of the issues that are connected to the Undeclared program, but I want to start out just giving you a bit of information about the advising experience overall at Providence College. So students, when they come through, everybody gets assigned an advisor, and we're going to go into a little more detail specifically about the Undeclared Advising Program, but that advisor is their primary point person. I like to, in larger sessions, go over an activity where I ask the groups of how many of you want to study abroad. So I'm just going to go through my list of things that I'm sure many of you are thinking about as you're trying to make your decisions on your institution. But I know many of you are probably looking to study abroad. I generally ask where people want to go. We get a lot of Europe. I actually one time had a student mention Boston, which was a little uncomfortable being in Providence. But many students want that as part of their academic profile, that they're going to go abroad. I always ask how many students want to get an internship. Many times I have students that want to get more than one internship, which I highly recommend. Sometimes students actually know locations. Students want to work for IBM or Disney or CVS. I've heard a little bit of everything in terms of internship goals. Many students, I know it's hard to think about right now when you're trying to pick one major, but many students want to select a double major, and they're curious about how those are going to fit or what might make sense and look very strong on a resume. Many times students are interested in selecting a minor, and a minor generally tends to be 6, possibly 7 courses of a secondary interest that complements their major area, or in some instances, it might be entirely different from their major area, but a passion that a student has. Many of our students ask about the opportunities for research, and in many programs that's highly recommended, and it's facilitated by faculty members. Additionally, some students want to think, what can they add to their academic profile regarding clubs, organizations, other volunteer experiences that might go very well together with a major and their academic experience. Lastly, I always ask students of what kind of skills do you want to develop? What are those areas maybe that you're very strong in, that you feel very comfortable, but still want to bring it to another level? Or maybe some of those areas that you identify you need some development, writing. Many times students, when I ask how many of you are strong writers, students tend to be a little hesitant, at least early on in their college experience, saying they're a strong writer. So the reason I ask those questions is because that's the kind of information that you would want to talk to your advisor about. Your advisor is the person that's going to help you connect the dots. So all of those great things that you want from your academic experience, your advisor is a great resource for you as you're trying to operationalize how do they all fit together? What's most important? When should I start planning for study abroad? Is a double major or minor feasible? You are not expected to know the answers to all those questions. You are, however, expected to reach out and connect with your resources. So unlike a guidance counselor that might call you into their office, it is up to you to be proactive and connect with your advisor. However, we're going to talk about some ways that the Undeclared program really gets you in front of your advisor often and early, so that way you're able to ask some of these questions and in some instances begin to get some information before you've even formulated some of these questions. So I just want to go in a little bit as well and talk about the the advisor experience for undeclared students. So all students will be assigned an advisor. In these instances, it's going to either be a faculty member or a high-level staff member that is trained and has gone through a rigorous development to become a strong advisor. Additionally, it's a volunteer-based program for faculty and administrators to get involved with undeclared advising. So what this means is the folks that are volunteering to be an undeclared advisor are truly passionate about trying to connect students to resources and really have them make the most of their educational experience while they're at PC and beyond. Additionally, those advisors will help facilitate relationships and connections to offices on campus that can better support a student depending on the question. So a perfect example is sometimes an advisor might have to connect with career education to maybe get that student a alum that might have that professional experience that a student is asking questions about. Or meaning to develop those relationships so the student can start having some informational interviews. And in some instances, this happens as early as first semester freshman year. It really depends on the student's comfort level and the questions they ask their advisor. So for all of this, we're going to go over a few different things today. But the one thing that I encourage you to do is start to think of what's your bucket list. What are those great things that you want to do before you graduate? And again, I listed a few: study abroad, internship, or some of the big ones. But it could be maybe I want to take some art classes to complement my analytical skills. Maybe I want to develop some writing skills. I've heard good things about maybe certain science courses. Really, whatever it is, the more you share with your advisor when you start these conversations, the better they can help you make the most of this meaningful experience. So I want to talk specifically about the undeclared program now that we've talked a little bit about the just the overall experience of being of the advising experience at Providence College. So many of the things that students ask when we do these undeclared sessions, first and foremost is it okay to be undeclared? It is very much okay to be undeclared. As you've probably identified in your search of other institutions, some schools actually do not allow students to select a major. Everybody comes in as undeclared. They might be shadowing certain programs, but they're not allowed to declare a major in some instances until their sophomore year or even their second semester freshman year. So it is fine to be undeclared. That's something that students must declare a major no later than second semester of their sophomore year. That's to ensure that they're able to graduate in 4 years and complete all their requirements in various majors. One thing I often get asked by students and families alike is, what kind of support do I have as I make my decision? And I always tell students, you could trip and fall, and there's going to be 4 people at Providence College that are going to help pick you up. That's just an example of the great network that we have, that people really, truly want to support our students. So that network can be a little bit of everything. Obviously, I mentioned the academic advisor is going to play a primary role in that experience because they're going to know the student's academic course load. They're going to know, based on their previous conversation and questions, the things that student is looking to achieve while they're at school. But I mentioned a few earlier as well: career counselors. We have outstanding career counselors and career education resources. Many students make the mistake of not visiting career education until their junior, senior year when they're thinking about resume and cover letters. That's the wrong way to proceed. I always recommend that students go to the Career Center in their first year. It's a good time to get a lay of the land, understand what they do and what resources they offer. But then you also start to get connected to our alumni network. And our alumni network is outstanding. It's very strong. I'm sure many of the participants in this room have family members that are alums. And our alums are very passionate and want to support current students. And I always try to nudge my undeclared students to career ed, specifically to begin that relationship with alums. I say at the very least, you'll probably get a free coffee out of the deal because they want to talk to current students. Another resource that students can use when they're undeclared are faculty members. I have students many times saying, I really enjoy my English class. I think I might want to major in this. How do you think I should proceed? And I say, one of the first things is, have you talked to your English professor? This is a person that you see all the time. It's good to use them as a sounding board, as a resource as you make your decision. And our faculty members love having these conversations with students. There are ample support staff around campus. Our Office of Academic Services, which is our tutoring and writing center, it's very student-based, and many times they start to have conversations with students about their interests and their goals, which will help to get them rolling to just ask more questions. One of the things I want to specifically highlight for undeclared students, and this is a bit unique, is the first year experience class, Introduction to Providence College. So this is a 1-credit course that undeclared students are pre-registered for in advance of the fall semester. So what that means is all undeclared students, when you sign up to be an undeclared student, if your schedule fits it, so there are some instances if a student's a student athlete or is selecting certain possible major courses, there are some instances where students are unable to take the first year experience class. But by and large, the majority of our undeclared students register and take a first year experience course. This is a 1-credit class taught by your advisor. So one of the great things about that is you will see your advisor weekly, and they're going to be checking in on students. They want to see how your courses are going. They want to hear about your exams. They really are invested in this experience. Every week, there's also going to be activities, assignments, different things that students have to go out into the community. So some of the examples are, one of the assignments for a given week is to interview a professor about the value of the liberal arts education. And we found every semester this is one of the most meaningful and fun assignments for our students, because some students are a little intimidated to talk to their professors. And an assignment like this encourages them to talk to them. And it actually reinforces the fact that these professors want to help support them be successful at Providence College, and it helps them develop a relationship and feel more connected to the community. We also have career education and some of their assessments, the major inventories, the lifestyle choices, those things are built into that course. So students are going to be doing these things for 1 credit with their advisor that tie in all those major exploration pieces. So obviously I'm biased. I've taught this class many times. I helped create it here. I've actually, when I was an undergraduate at University of Connecticut, I was one of the first students to take a first year experience course. But the data shows that at Providence College and nationwide, students that take a first year experience class get connected and stay connected to their institution sooner. So this will give you a leg up by having that point person, by seeing your advisor every week when things are good, when maybe there's some troubles, if you have random questions, that is someone that you will see often and develop that relationship with. So that intro to Providence College, that 1-credit class is a great bonus of being in the undeclared program. One of the other questions that I get from students is, will being undeclared impact my graduation date? So the short answer to that is no. The caveat to that is, if a student is looking to go towards, let's say, chemistry or business, those majors are very sequential. So in some instances, a student needs to be exploring those classes to make sure that if they hop into that second semester of their sophomore year, they wouldn't be behind. Obviously, this is a question and conversation they'd be having with their advisor during all their registrations. But that is the only caveat of, as long as the student is exploring some of those classes and trying to mirror that progress, it's going to have no impact on their graduation. Something also I get a lot of questions about is, will it impact my ability to register for courses? If I'm not a certain major, is there any drawback to that? What I recommend to students is, if you are leaning towards a very strict major, and strict in terms of structure, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but majors that are very sequential. So when I mentioned chemistry, you need majors Chem 1, majors Chem 2, organic Chem 1, organic Chem 2, calculus 1, calculus 2. So it's very sequential. So that's something that you need to make sure that you're taking those courses at the appropriate time to stay on track. So what I recommend to students, if you are 50% or more leaning towards a major that has a very sequential nature, chemistry, math, physics, marketing, management, those courses have prerequisites in place. So if you are 50% or higher leaning towards those majors, I encourage you to actually start your first semester in that program. And I know that might seem like we're going a little quick with this, but it's not set in stone. What that means is you would have that experience as a biology major, as a marketing major, and that would allow you to sample those classes in your first semester, and you'd still have the opportunity to take maybe a writing course or something else that's blended in with your program. But in those majors that are very sequential, it's in your best interest to sample those early on to ensure that you get seats in those courses. And as well, you'd also get a quick taste of, is this a good fit for me? Is this something that I enjoy? Maybe I took some biology classes in high school. I had a perception of what it was then, and then you'd see it at the college level. So it's going to be different for every student, but I usually say about 50, potentially 60%. If you are leaning towards that one program, it might make sense in your case to actually declare that program so you go in your first semester sampling that major. I know saying that is giving some students a little bit of stress. That's the last thing I want to do. My job is actually to make your life less stressful. So please know that if you select a major and you go in your first week and say, this is not right for me, your undeclared advisor, you'd be assigned, you could actually switch to undeclared, and your advisor can help you change your schedule. And it's just paperwork, to be quite honest with you. So it's not problematic if you decide it's not a good fit for you. And again, it's a case-by-case situation for every student, but that's something I like to share with students, that if you are leaning 50% or more in the very structured majors, so that's the business school and our STEM majors, in most instances, it makes sense to declare that major. In addition, that will then allow you priority seats in your coming semesters to hop into those classes. You would register as that major. So if you're a biology major, you would meet with your biology department advisor around the time of registration and advising, and you would have a conversation about what courses you need for your major before non-majors take them. For most courses, it's not a problem at all. For most courses, it's very easy for students as long as they're managing the system, aware of wait lists, they're planning ahead to get the majority of classes they want as an undeclared student. However, there are some programs that can be a little strict depending on the student's interests. So again, this is something we talk about a little more in depth in larger sessions, but I'd like to at least address that because that's a common question I get in many of these webinars or these open houses. Something else I'd like to show you, because again, the resources piece is very important. I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to review our resources and look and see what makes sense for you. So two that I really want to highlight, and again, I am biased. I did create our webpage, so I think it's great. But the undeclared, the academic advising resource page. So you'll see that is the red arrow on the academic-advising.providence.edu page. And these slides will be available afterwards as well. But it's the arrow right above that gentleman's head. That's how you get to the academic advising resource page. That page is a collection of all the information that I've received questions about from faculty, staff, and students to better support our students. So you'll see in there a lot of the academic catalog is in there. So if you want to get a sense of what is our psychology major like, I would encourage you to go into the academic catalog, look at the courses, and you could actually search and see the course descriptions of every psychology class that we offer that's on the books. This is a great way for you to do a quick assessment of, do these seem fun? Do they seem interesting? Is this something that I want to learn about? And that's a very safe and comfortable way for you to do some research. And then as you continue in this the search process, you can then go a little deeper and talk to folks about how these combine, what kind of research opportunities. But really looking at a catalog is a good jumping off point to get more information. Additionally, you'll see information about study abroad and global education in there. I know that's a common question students have. Undeclared students, many of them do wind up studying abroad once they declare a major, but you do have to declare a major before you study abroad. It'll also have information about academic services, development of Western civilization. You'll see the current content we have in there regarding the registration and advising process that we've shifted to doing remote for this semester, like many places are. And additionally, you'll also see the second red arrow here is for an academic guidebook. An academic guidebook, I love it. I think it's great. My office makes it. But what it is, it has all of the information students need to understand all of the programs, majors and minors, academic policies, AP credit, all of those things that we get questions about throughout this process. It also has a 4-year plan for every single major. So if you're a list person like me, those 4-year plans are great because it can then tell you, what is my playbook? What are those courses that I should be doing my junior year? What does my senior year look like? And obviously it's the course, it doesn't have the course description. That's where you'd have to use the catalog, but it's a great way to begin to structure and identify, oh, I see that the political science major has an opportunity for internships in your senior year. I could begin to fit that in. So it's another strong resource that can help you understand how to make the most of your academic experience. Additionally, it also has some helpful information for undeclared students. One of the first things it mentions is it's okay to be undeclared. There's no stigma associated with being undeclared. Being undeclared can actually be a beneficial experience for many students because it allows them to sample a few different areas without deciding exactly what they want to do yet. In some instances, I have many students that know what they want to do, but there's some fear and trepidation with being labeled as a certain major. So that's something, again, that I just mentioned, that we move that around very easily. And it's not just your major that's going to get you a job. It's your major. How well did you do in it? What else did you combine with it? What other academic experiences, co-curricular experiences, study abroad, internship, a little bit of everything. So although some students have a lot of trepidation about actually declaring a major, again, it's not just your major, it's a little bit of everything there. Additionally, in the academic guidebook that you can access online, it highlights a lot of our support services. So we have a pre-health science advising program that Dr. Lynn Lawson, a physicist, she works with students as they're curious about anything in the health professions field. She's an outstanding resource. We also have a pre-law advising program with Dr. Paul Heron. He's a political science professor who supports students as they're contemplating going to law school, what that process entails. One little note with that is that many students, and you'll see as you go to different schools, they will advertise that they have a pre-law program, pre-law classes. That is not necessary. Pre-law, if you talk to anybody that is going towards, that is a lawyer or law admissions offices, they don't really get hung up on the idea that you have to major in one particular area to be a lawyer. That's just not true. Law schools will teach you how to be a lawyer. What they want is students that have strong writing skills, analytical skills, public speaking skills. Those are all of those things that will help you excel in that profession. So in many instances, we've had students report to us that their Development of Western Civilization courses, DWC, it's a 4-course sequence they take in their first 2 years. That helps to prepare them for law school because they're going to be reading a lot of dense texts. They're going to be analyzing and creating arguments from that material. That is exactly what they'd be doing in many instances in law school. So that's another resource there. It breaks down in the guidebook the pre-law advising program and what Dr. Heron can do to support you. Also, career education is listed in there, as well as Office of Academic Services. So a lot of supplemental support that will help students as they are trying to figure out what is best for them and weighing their options. So that, again, is just a brief overview of the academic advising experience, as well as the Undeclared program. So just to review some of the things that I mentioned here, academic advising, you would have a faculty member assigned to you in your program. One thing I didn't mention, if you're a double major, you get 2 advisors in your program. Undeclared students will be pre-registered for a first-year experience course, a 1-credit undeclared experience. That instructor will also be your academic advisor until you declare a major. I mentioned before that if a student is going towards or leaning towards a very structured major and is about 50%, and again, that's a rough number, but if they are more than 50% leaning towards that area, I would encourage you to declare that major, sample it for a semester, and then reassess. There's still ways that you can use a lot of the resources from the Undeclared program. You're still able to use career education. You can still use your faculty members. You can still go to the major minor fair. It's encouraged for all first-year students. But again, that's just my recommendation in some of those programs based on the sequencing courses. Additionally, if you forget everything I'm talking to you about today, one thing I want you to begin to think about is, what do I want out of my academic experience in college? Start to create your bucket list, because that is a great motivator. If you think of all of those things that you want to do before you graduate school and even beyond school, what's going to be those primers for you? That bucket list will help you have some structure when you start to talk to your advisor about all the things you want to do, the things you're passionate about, the problems that you want to solve, the people that you want to help. What are those things that give you value in terms of work? Those are very important. And those are the things that your advisor will lean in and really enjoy talking to you about. So at this point, I see that there are a lot of questions over here. So I want to, Owen, do you want me to start to?
Yeah, I can filter them through and read them for the group. And then if you want to take a stab at answering them, we have quite a few that have already been asked. So thank you to everyone who has done that. Just a reminder, if you do have any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat window, and we would be happy to get those answered for you. Our first question is, are 2 advisors only for double majors? What about students who have a major and a minor? Example, an English major and a film minor.
Great question. So double majors are primarily, that's where you'd get 2 advisors. However, students don't usually get advisors in a minor, but that doesn't mean they still can't speak to someone within that minor program. There are exceptions to that, though. We have a business innovation minor, which is a really exciting minor that has business applications. So there's certain courses like data application in business. There is an overview of accountancy and finance and design thinking. Those are some of the foundation courses for the business innovation minor. And then there's 4 separate tracks in that minor. They highlight organizations and entrepreneurs, fine arts, globalization, and STEM. You would have an advisor in a minor like that because there's a lot of moving pieces. So although you technically wouldn't have an official minor advisor, you would still receive support from your department.
Excellent. Thank you. Our next question, we're actually going to combine 2 of them, but it is, when do incoming freshmen register for classes? And I imagine in the same answer you can cover, when will I meet my advisor for the first time and who picks that person?
Great question. So that's something that, so due to the current pandemic, we're currently reassessing our advising day process. So those dates are still on the docket, but we know since it is in June, we're still trying to navigate this process, and some of these pieces are going to go remote. So that's something we're talking about. Students will receive, we build schedules in advance for first year students, because we understand that understanding the different processes, signing into the system is a bit problematic when you start. So what we do is all undeclared students will complete an interest survey. We use that interest survey where you would select 3 possible major areas. And then with that information, we would then build your schedule so you are beginning to sample those different areas. So if you say on there that you want to be a business major or leaning towards one of the 4 tracks in business, but you're less than 50%, as I mentioned before, and maybe you're half business, half global studies, what have you, we would then build a schedule with those pieces in place. So you would receive development of Western civilization, which all students have in their first semester, and then possibly 2, maybe even 3 major courses already built into your schedule. In most instances, students take 4 to 5 classes. So we would build the majority of your schedule. Some programs, students actually have their schedule fully built. So if you are a biology major, you would start with a structured schedule, and then you would work with your advisor and your department to make any alterations. If maybe you didn't want to take chemistry your first semester, you would talk to your biology advisor and they'd walk you through that process. So currently we're working on that registration piece. Generally, students would receive their schedule in June when they would come through advising days. Due to the current situation, we're reassessing that. So we're hoping to have that information in place shortly. So please check your email. Also, once that information is updated, we'll be putting it on the advising day webpage. So as soon as that information is available, you will have that. And I think there was one more piece of that question that I forgot. What was the?
Just when? No, I think that's mostly it. When will they meet their advisor for the first time?
Okay. Yes. So that you would meet your advisor through the orientation and advising day process. So in a traditional advising day timeframe, you would meet a representative from your academic department during those days, and that could be your advisor, but in some instances, it might be the department chair, the assistant chair. It really depends on the department. You would meet your advisor during your August orientation session. Additionally, I always encourage students to go and see their advisor in the first couple weeks. That's something, again, to help you be more proactive and not be passive. I always jokingly tell students that I could chip a golf ball and hit most buildings on campus because it's a beautiful campus, but it is not as huge as some of the large state schools that have 40, 50,000 people. So going out to meet your advisor, they love meeting with their students. So I encourage you to do that in your first 2 weeks. But there will be ample opportunities for you to meet with your advisor throughout the course of August and starting this semester as well.
Excellent. Looking at the attendee list, there's quite a few students from kind of outside the Northeast and then also a few international students. Do you mind just addressing as well how the advising program also has a component in August for students who aren't able to come for the one-day session?
Happy to. Sure. So as I mentioned, we build schedules in advance for students. So it doesn't matter what day you attend, you have the same opportunity to get the same classes other students do. So it's very equitable that we make sure that if you're an international student, if you're in the West Coast, if you're in Connecticut, you have the same opportunity for those courses. In a traditional advising day setting, we have our June days and then we'd have an August date. where that's where students that are living out of state, unable to travel, conflicts, what have you, international students, they tend to go to that later August advising day session. Where it stands right now, we're still seeing what are going to be the appropriate days for students to come back to campus. So there might be an instance where all students are coming back around the same time. Again, this is still fluid, but as there's more information, we will be sharing it with all of you.
Excellent. Our next question is kind of admission related, so I'll take the first stab at it, and then if you have anything else to add, certainly feel free. The student is asking or saying they want to change their major. How do they do that before school starts? And the first step of that is to request that from your admission counselor. So if you log into the admission status portal on the right-hand side, you'll see your counselor's name and email, and you can certainly send them a message requesting it. If you have not yet enrolled, I would recommend doing it before you submit your enrollment deposit, because at that point, you're able to do it just with the Office of Admission. Once you've enrolled and we've let the rest of campus know that you're coming, you are going to have to fill out some forms. So it just is a little bit easier for you, but overall, it's still a pretty easy process at any point. One thing that's nice is that students are admitted to Providence on the whole. We're really not admitting students to the school of this or the school of that. There's going to be some caveats where if you're looking to switch into chemistry, then we are going to look at your math and science preparation and make sure you can be successful in those programs. But really, it's not like a competitiveness thing as you're kind of figuring out through April and May what you want your major to be. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, that's exactly it. I think the biggest thing that I always like to, especially from my perspective as the director of advising and Undeclared, is just to think that there's nothing wrong with switching a major. I have students switching a major multiple times. I mean, that's really part of the process, is that as you're exposed to more information, you begin to refine your idea of what you value and what you enjoy. So many students wind up switching their major. We have students switching their major 2-3 times before the start of the semester. All that is just a movement of paperwork. It will have to change some classes depending on when it's done. But again, there's no problem with switching a major. But as Owen said, I would encourage you to do it a little earlier if you feel confident that you want that major, just to make sure that you're doing it in advance. It just makes things a little easier on your end.
Great. Our next question, the student asks or says, I'm undecided. I'm aware that you do not have a specific communications major. How would I go down the news, broadcast, politics, and media side of that field? I'm not interested in the more technological digital side. Could I do an English major, for example?
So that's a great question. So the short answer is yes, you could definitely do an English major. We have many students that want to go towards communications, that realize that they want to develop those writing skills that are important in all communication professions. So they go an English track, potentially a theater track, because there's a lot of that oral communication piece tied to it, a lot of that digital side. The other piece is we do have an individualized major application program. And what that is students would look at other institutions. Maybe you love PC, but we don't have the exact major you want. And you would look at another school that has a program that you like, and you would work to build your own major. And I don't say this lightly, because it is an extensive process. When I actually talk to students about the application, I kind of flap it in my hand a little bit, because it is about a 12-page application, and it requires the student to be very proactive, because the student has to first look at another school, see the courses that are offered in that program. And then they have to look at our academic catalog and go through and see if we have complementary courses. So you will find with certain communication majors, since we don't have that major here at PC, we might be missing some of those courses that you would generally find. So we don't have an introduction to communication course. However, there are going to be some of those elements, intro to journalism from the English department, or maybe some mass media politics courses from our political science department, that they find enough of those pieces to put that major together. And then they would select 2, possibly 3 primary major areas. So I've worked with a few students to go building a communication major that they identified English and theater as their 2 programs they're going to work with, that had the majority of the classes that they would pull from to do an individualized program. They would then make sure to meet with those academic departments to ensure that those courses are going to be offered. There's a statement of purpose that students have to create. They create their own academic planning form. So it's an extensive process. But if a student wants to major in something that we don't offer, it is a viable alternative. But the caveat is we have to have some of those classes. So there are some programs that we just do not have those pieces for you to be able to build your own. But we have had students build communication majors in the past.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, how many classes might you be able to sample during your freshman year, given the core classes that need to be taken?
Great question. So all students will take in their first year Development of Western Civilization 101 and then Development of Civilization 102. So that's going to be a 4-credit class that's built into every schedule. Outside of that, I know it sounds a little flippant, but you could actually use those 3 or 4 other courses to sample other areas. And I know some students are very concerned of, but you're saying that, how am I going to graduate on time if I'm just using those free electives? Those would not be free electives. I have students that they can begin to look at the core requirements and sample areas. So if I use economics as an example, if a student says, I'm leaning towards maybe economics, I maybe want to try something in history, those courses, depending on what they choose, specifically the early intro classes, fit in the core. So that means an economics student that's going to explore economics, if they take micro or macroeconomics, it fulfills a social science requirement, which every major has. Maybe they sample their math course, which fulfills a quantitative reasoning requirement. So there are ways that students could sample upwards of 6 to 8 classes in their first year from different areas. If you want to be a little more structured about it, and let's say that my answer doesn't make you feel too comfortable because you want to make sure you're checking off boxes in your graduation progress, you could do Civ in fall and spring, and then 1 to 2 core classes every semester, and have 2, possibly 3 courses a semester that are sampling from different areas. So there's a few different ways to play with this, and that's where really your advisor will help chime in and help navigate this process. Because I know it sounds daunting as you're making this exploration process. I'm talking about the core and I'm getting into the weeds with specific requirements. It is also our advising period, so it's just on the brain right now. But that's where you can start to delve deeper into our academic guidebook, and you'll see how open some of the majors are in terms of what their expectations are for your first year and your ability to explore different areas.
Excellent. Speaking of exploring, we have a student that's wondering, as they are undeclared, would they need to apply to the business school if they determine ultimately it's the direction they would like to go? And can they take business classes while being undeclared to help them make that decision?
Great question. So I'll answer the second part first. So you're allowed to take business classes as an undeclared student. So you can still take an introductory principles of marketing class as an undeclared student. However, the business school, to actually, once you're at Providence College, once you start the semester, you would have to actually go to a declaration session to then apply for the major. So most majors, you would meet with a department chair and they would welcome you into the major. You have a conversation, and again, it's a change of major form. Since the business school is so large, if a student wants to go into business, before they can actually change their major, they have to register and attend a declaration session. And a declaration session is really a broad overview of the business program, because we find many students want to major in business but don't understand what business actually entails. So these declaration sessions give students an overview of the common requirements that all business majors will be taking: micro, macroeconomics, statistics, principles of marketing, accountancy, principles of accountancy, all of those different pieces that are the foundation. And in that session, they make the decision, this is appealing, I'd like to switch my major. Or there's some instances where students say, I don't want to switch my major, this doesn't sound like something I would enjoy. But so once you're here, though, you have to attend a declaration session to get into the business school. Additionally, after your first semester, you would have to have at least a 2.5 GPA to be able to enter into the business school. So there is a GPA threshold to enter once you start at Providence College.
Excellent. Our next question is going back to kind of the nuts and bolts of advising. How often do I have to, and how often do you think I will meet with my advisor?
You have to, at the bare minimum, meet with your advisor once a semester, because your advisor will give you your alternate PIN, and that is your secret code to be able to register for classes. If you do not have that code number, you're not able to register for classes. However, meeting with an advisor only once a semester is not recommended. I would say I would want you to meet with the advisor at least 2, possibly 3 times. I want you to develop a relationship with this person. In many instances, so if you're an undeclared student, you'll meet with your advisor 13 times at a minimum, because you meet with them every week as part of that first year experience course. Some students, I know in many instances, you will be taking a course, an intro course, where your advisor might be your instructor. So again, a bare minimum of once a semester. However, once is not enough in my eyes. That for you to really make sure that you can accomplish all those things on your bucket list so you can prepare ahead, I would encourage you to meet with your advisor 2-3 times a semester. And also, too, remember, they like students. They purposely work in higher education because they want to meet and connect with college students. So I know there is some fear of they're busy people, or I'm afraid Dr. So-and-so, Father so-and-so. It can be intimidating with titles. You'll realize that they are people that are just very passionate about their subject matter and want to develop relationships with students. So long answer, but 2 to 3 times is what I would recommend at least a semester.
Sounds good. Next question is, if I decide on a major and end up not liking it, can you change your major in your junior year?
So yes, however, it depends on if you've been taking those courses. So if you decide all of a sudden, maybe you're a psych major, you've been taking psych classes, and then you decide your junior year that you want to switch into sociology. If you haven't taken any sociology courses, when you go to meet with the department, they might identify this is too close for you to meet all those requirements before graduation. So while you can switch your major into your junior year, it is with the approval of the department chair. So they make sure they review your degree audit, which is a list of all of your requirements and courses you've taken, to ensure that you have enough classes completed to be able to successfully complete your degree in 4 years, because they do not want you to have to stay longer than necessary. So they'll walk you through that process. I have had some instances where students say, I want to change my major, and they just haven't taken enough courses in their junior year to make that transition smoothly. So they've actually declared a minor. So that way they still have a major in an area that they have a lot of the foundation done, but then they have that minor to complement that major.
Great. Our next question is, if we have a program in neuroscience, and is there a maximum amount of students who can participate in it?
So we do have a neuroscience program, and that program I would actually encourage you to look on our webpage. It's an application-based program. I'm not positive about the specific number of how many students that are accepted, but I know it's a smaller program because it is essentially almost an honors level experience for students. And it is joined, it's a combination between biology and psychology. So there are students that would major in biology and then be a neuroscience. I get a neuroscience certificate. There's also students that major in psychology, and then they would do the neuroscience certificate. That's most instances. And again, that's not specifically an area I deal with often, but those are most of the students that get that neuroscience certificate. They major in psych or bio because of that combination of courses. But it is students have to apply to get into the program, and it is very rigorous. So that's something to keep in mind, that GPA is very important to be able to be accepted into the neuroscience certificate program.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's not familiar with some of the terminology, a certificate is generally more than a minor, but less than a major. So as Peter mentioned, they're having students from biology and from psychology, and you're maintaining that as your primary degree and joining the program in addition. I would also add it's 12 students each year who are added to the neuroscience program. You apply at the end of your in the second semester of your freshman year, and it's based off the work that you've done at Providence up until that point, excuse me. The next question is, do I understand correctly that if I haven't declared a major, I cannot study abroad?
So that's a great question. So students, once they go abroad, they have to have a major, because in advance of the study abroad process, so the application process, students do a 4-year plan. And this is for their benefit, because they want to make sure both their advisor, their major department, and study abroad, that the study abroad experience will help keep that momentum towards graduation. So students need to have a major so they can know what classes they'd be taking while they're abroad that will fulfill major and core requirements. I have had students that have applied to study abroad while they're still trying to decide upon their major, but the study abroad office, because you will be studying abroad in your junior year in most instances, and students need to have a major. Again, I mentioned that if you're undeclared, you have to declare a major no later than second semester of your sophomore year. So at that point, you would have a declared major to study abroad. You can't go abroad and be undeclared, because then when you come back, you'd have too much to catch up, and it would make that 4-year time frame a little tight.
Great. Next question, I think, is one that we'll both answer, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
The student is asking, I want to major in biology. When I received my acceptance letter, it didn't say anything about my major. However, my portal says that my academic interest is biology. Does that mean I can major in biology and pre-med at PC? So yes, I can confirm whatever it says at the top of your admission status portal as your academic interest is what your declared major will be. We do not admit students to the college, but not their major. If you put biology on your Common App and that's what it says on your portal, that's what your major will be. Specifically with regard to pre-med, Peter, do you want to address when a student actually joins that advising program?
So that's a great question. The pre-med piece, I've had students actually reach out to Dr. Lawson and start that conversation in advance of their advising day, that they have certain questions about what information do they need to know, what are those certain courses to be on a pre-med track, so they can hop in at any point. Dr. Lawson has office hours that are open, that students that are leaning towards pre-med, pre-health, pre-vet, pre-dental, all of those, she meets with those students and begins to be a resource for them. But again, there's no timetable on that because students have certain courses they need to follow if they're doing pre-med that are recommended. But Dr. Lawson is going to be that point person that can help them get more clarity if they're going towards a specialized program.
Great. We have kind of a follow-up question on the advising day that takes place before orientation. So when students choose to do that part in August, is the advising day the same day as the orientation in August?
So again, that's still being figured out right now due to the timing of things. We're trying to assess when it's going to be best for students to come back on campus. Previously, advising days were in June, and then orientation, which has more of a social element to it, but also a way that students can get connected to their department, would happen in August. As it stands now, it's looking like those might be more combined in August because that's when it's more feasible for students to be back on campus. But again, it's a fluid situation, so more information to follow. I apologize for not being able to answer that question fully, but I actually have a Zoom meeting on Monday that we're going through a lot of these details. So it's kind of evolving as we get more information.
Great. Next question would certainly be a great one for Dr. Herron, and I would encourage all students asking questions to feel free to reach out to the department chairs and faculty members and advisors. They would certainly be happy to answer questions as well. But this student is asking that they're interested in law. What do you think would be some good options for a major?
Excellent question. Whenever I get asked this question, I always ask students, what do you love? What are you good at? Because I have many students that say, I need to major in political science to be a lawyer, or I need to major in sociology to be a lawyer. And that's just not true. I've had students previously that have majored in a foreign language and have done very well and gone on to law school. So I would encourage you that if you want to go to law school, major in something that you enjoy and are going to do well in. Because one of the biggest things that is going to get you into law school is a very strong GPA. So I've had students force themselves into a major saying, I must be a political science major to go to law school. And I say, well, do you like political science? They say, no, I hate it, but it's something that I know I need for law school. I said, that's not true. A GPA of a 2.4 in a major that you're forcing yourself into is not going to open doors for you. And that really goes for more than just law school. Students many times feel like they have to be a certain major to get into a certain profession. And while that's true in many instances, I've had students be pre-med when they were English majors. That's possible. They just do very well in their English major and they take all of those requirements that are necessary for medical school. So my bigger thought process with this is major in that thing you love and that you enjoy doing the work for. I want you to be that student in your group of friends that keeps talking about that project you're doing, that they really just want you to stop after a while because you're so excited about talking about that project. That's going to increase your GPA and make you make those connections to excel. That's going to open more doors, graduate school, law school, medical school. So really pick something that you enjoy and then work with your advisor to figure out how to get those experiences necessary to go towards law.
Great. Our next question is a little separate from advising, but certainly still happy to answer. And that would be what % of students go abroad? Do you want to take it?
Absolutely. So that's shifted recently. I think, and you might be able to correct me on this. I know we were in the 40s.
Yeah, it's low 40% of students have some sort of international experience in a given year, predominantly juniors. We do offer several different abroad programs. There's the usual semesters. There are some year-long opportunities, though I will say those aren't very popular with us. Most students don't want to give up that full year. And then there's also a Maymester program where several academic departments have a program where you stay at the end of the spring semester, study with several faculty members, and then go abroad with those same professors for a period of time. So there are a number of options available, but it's generally about 40% I would recommend, if I can make a little plug, we do have a webinar coming up on April 29th, where the Dean of Global Education, Joe Stanley, will be presenting on study abroad, as well as a number of other different international opportunities. So certainly that could be a good opportunity to ask those questions too.
Great.
And our next question. Does study abroad push back your graduation?
No. So study abroad, as I mentioned before, part of the study abroad application process is you do a 4-year plan. So what that 4-year plan does is you plan outside just not only that semester you'll be abroad, you plan for when you return. So what that will do is help you identify very early on, what are those priorities? What are those things that maybe you're not getting while you're abroad that you'll have to get when you return? So as I mentioned before, if study abroad is on your bucket list, when you meet with your advisor early on in your academic career, you can start to have these conversations. So if you're talking about study abroad in your freshman year, sophomore year, that gives you ample time to know what is on the horizon. What are those courses I need to take while I'm abroad? What are those things I can't take while I'm abroad? So as Owen mentioned, our global education office is outstanding. They're a really good resource where there's many different iterations of how you can study abroad. But as long as you're planning and asking those questions, study abroad does not push back your graduation date.
Excellent. Our next question is about the liberal arts honors program. Happy to provide kind of a little general information, but we'll also add that for students admitted to the honors program, there will be a session that takes place next Thursday where Dr. Lynch of the honors program, as well as several current students involved in the honors program, will be providing their experiences. But generally, the main thing I would emphasize is that it's called the liberal arts honors program because it affects the liberal arts coursework that a student will be taking. You're not necessarily going to be taking the majority of your major courses at the honors level, but rather many of your core classes. You'll take programs like the development of Western civilization, several other core classes. And then there's also different colloquia opportunities to study internationally, a mentoring program, but it's a purely academic program. There's no separate housing or anything like that that's involved with the honors program. The last thing I would add is that it is a very small program. It's only about 10% of our admitted students who receive an invitation into that. And if a student's interested in being considered once they arrive at Providence, they certainly are welcome to apply at the end of their first year to Dr. Lynch. And that decision is based off only the work that you've done at Providence. Your high school work is no longer considered. I don't know if you would have anything else to add from an advising standpoint on honors or...
The advising piece is that you would have a secondary support network in the honors program. So you would have Dr. Lynch, Dr. Fournier. They would be people that would be a resource for you to help you with your academic choices. So while you would have a major advisor, again, you'd have another layer of support within the honors program that would help you make sure that you're meeting the honors requirements and just answering those questions about how everything fits well together.
Excellent. So our next question is going back to a topic that we've talked about, but I want to make sure it's clear since the questions are still coming. So this person is asking, so for people on the Northeast, advising and orientation is in June and August is for people further away. That's not the case. I can kind of reset orientation if it helps, and then we can talk about the advising piece. So orientation at Providence is kind of split into two parts. There's academic advising days, which for the majority of students in the traditional setup takes place in June. And then there's the orientation program, which is where you're meeting your classmates, you're taking tours of the city of Providence, you're learning how to adjust to campus life. That's the more kind of traditional orientation part. Those are two fairly different programs that have a very different purpose. For some students, traveling to campus just doesn't make sense to come for one day in the summer. Certainly some students are able to, but it's not just a students who are further away and students who are closer thing. It's also that some students work. Some students have family responsibilities. For many reasons, they can't get to the day for their class. As Peter mentioned, because you're pre-registered and because of all those pieces, you're not at a disadvantage, but some students do request to come in August for the advising portion the day before orientation begins. Would you say that's a fair way to reset it, or anything else to add?
Yes, no, that's better than I did. So the thing though to keep in mind is that, again, since there's unprecedented events going on right now, you're going to be receiving more information about how this program is going to shift. because unfortunately we can't offer the traditional program. So we're now we're trying to be proactive to make sure that we honor the spirit of the program, where students still get a lot of the information, but we're trying to make sure that it's done in a safe way, that when they return to campus, we can still get a lot of those pieces that they would have had during that June session. So more information to follow. Again, I apologize, I can't provide more right now, but since it is evolving, this is something that we're looking at and trying to make sure that we meet the needs of all of our students.
Great, thank you. I apologize. We are having quite a few questions coming in, so we're trying to get to all of them. But certainly at the end, if we're not able to reach yours, we'll provide some other ways that we can answer the questions that you may have. Peter, the next one's kind of specific, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to, but this student is interested in being a nutritionist and wondering what may be a good major for that.
Sure. Many instances, students that are leaning towards nutrition tend to gravitate towards biology and the sciences, maybe chemistry. That's where most of the students tend to land, is that biology piece, because they're going to be looking at the human body, either that lab work. That's important to have that baseline for nutrition. But again, that's where I would like to reference my colleague, Dr. Lawson, who's in the academic guidebook, gratuitous plug for the academic guidebook, where you can reach out to her and start that conversation, because that's still in the health science field. And she's the person that helps really craft those programs for students to answer that nutrition specific opportunity. But again, in my experience, I find that many students that are going towards nutrition, physical therapy, those type of programs tend to land in the sciences, because they need those requirements to move forward in those careers.
Excellent, thank you. And then we have another question that is asking how long the study abroad options are. So there are some programs that are specifically run by Providence. One that is kind of most common would be the center that the college runs in Rome, where there are members of our faculty who who teach there, along with others, local professors as well. And that is attended by a number of Providence students. There's some other programs that are less consistent, but offered on a kind of rotating basis, that are also run by college faculty. And then there's about 300 other programs that students can choose from. As Peter mentioned before, the nice thing is that a lot of the work has been done for you. You're going to need to kind of sketch out your plan once you're there, but you're not going to have to worry about having classes count for credit or anything like that. All of these programs have been evaluated by the Center for Global Education. We recognize that they're legitimate academic programs, and not only are the credits going to transfer back to Providence, but the grades that you receive are as well. So I think those are certain things to keep in mind. With regard to how long they are, as I mentioned, the majority of the programs are a semester long. There are some longer ones, like the London School of Economics, I know is a common one that is only a year-long program. And there are some shorter ones, some of our international service opportunities, as well as some of the Maymester programs. But I would say the bulk of them, and Peter, feel free to add if this is your experience as well, the bulk of our students who are studying abroad are doing for a semester.
Yes, I agree. I feel that many of our students want that full semester experience, but I have seen an uptick in a lot of the Maymester experiences. Actually, I'm quite jealous when I talk to many of my students. I had students, unfortunately, some of the sessions were canceled, but going to Cuba, going to Belize, that they're doing research. So there was a tropical biology class that was going to be going to Belize, and that's offered in a Maymester. So there's a lot of different opportunities. So if it is something that you're interested in and it's on your bucket list, I would definitely use our global education resources, hop in on the webinar that Owen was mentioning, but I would also start to poke around on the global education website, because they also have, as I mentioned before, recommendations for different schools and locations based on majors that you're leaning toward. So that's always very fun for me as I start to look at the locations and even some of the courses that are site specific. So if you haven't already, I would check out that website, because it's pretty substantial, the information that's on there.
Excellent. Great. And thank you, everyone, for submitting your questions. I apologize that we weren't able to answer all of them, but there are certainly a number of resources that are still available. For all students who are tuning into these webinars, whether you are just beginning your search or an admitted student, I would like to remind you that we do have our Webinar Wednesday series. And future topics include mental health, the global opportunities at Providence College, as well as financial aid. I'll also add that Monday through Friday, staff from the Office of Admission, along with our current admission ambassadors, will be providing sessions on the admission process, as well as their personal experiences as a student at PC. And then for the students who are admitted to the class of 2024, we're excited that on Monday evening, Virtual Visit Week will launch, which is it's an experience. You'll be able to do some of the more expected things like take a virtual tour of campus and explore different areas, but you'll also have the opportunity to have one-on-one texting chats with every academic department on campus. So certainly if you have more questions about neuro and the nuances of certain programs, that would be a great time to do that. There's also going to be welcome receptions where you are able to meet alumni from throughout the country. Along with current students from areas to learn more about their experience and life after Providence, and a number of other surprises that we have in store as well. So certainly feel free, if you're admitted, to check out your admission status portal, or if you're just beginning to explore, check out the college's general website. And we hope you join us for some of those. But Peter, thank you so much for giving up some time this evening to help everyone. And if you have any other questions, both of our contact information is on the website. Please feel free to be in touch. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening and stay safe, everyone.
Take care.